As I mentioned in my last Division video on Manhunt Season 3, we were left with far more questions than answers, especially when it comes to the hunters. But there was also this mysterious new character who was calling the shots in regards to Barden Schaefer and the BTSU. Although it was awesome to see the hunters actually being featured in the story, in one way or another, it's really just led to further speculation on their origin. But as a number of you have requested, for some reason, you'd actually like to hear my ramblings on the topic. Which is cool because I kinda like making these speculation videos, even though they're often less about the facts and more about the what-ifs, based on a sometimes very limited amount of information that has been presented to us within the game. Plus, my wife likes it because I'm sharing my thoughts with you, rather than bugging her with the over-the-top ideas that really mean absolutely nothing to her. This is often a more relaxed sort of video where I taper back the slightly more monotone style of story narrative and try to focus on what we've seen so far and what it could possibly mean. Basically, I geek out to people as nerdy as me when it comes to the potential direction the subject in question could be going. And in this case, we're talking about Natalia Sokolova and the hunter that seemed to be assisting her in the Black Tusk. I'm not going to run through all the previous theory and speculation around the hunters. I may refer back to it from time to time, but I assume the majority of you interested in this have likely seen my earlier videos on the topic or have read about these sort of ideas on the forums or Reddit. So rather than wasting your time, I'll simply post a link to each of these videos in the description. For now, let's discuss what we saw of the hunter in Season 3. Leading up to each of the minor manhunt targets, he would make himself known as we were fighting the rogue agents. But he didn't appear to be solely targeting the Division agent. He was hostile towards the enemy rogues and their supporting factions. Yes, we may have been able to take him down during the manhunts, but it was very obviously not what was intended by the writers, so we'll disregard any of that for now. The majority of the time, if the hunter was focused on by agents, he would simply vanish in a cloud of smoke, not appearing again until the next manhunt showed up, and then rinse and repeat. Unless of course he managed to catch you by surprise and take you down first, but let's not talk about that. This went on and on until Barden Schaefer's location was finally made known. On Coney Island, this hunter was targeting Rikers, who were scattered around the mission, but he was also toying with the agents, until Barden eventually told him to quit playing around and finish the job. And this is where the agents were finally able to fight, without having him disappear. So a few points that we can note from the season just past. It was the same hunter we were meeting up with throughout the manhunt. His mask seemed a little different to the other hunters we've seen so far. He was hostile to all but Black Tusk, and that includes Barden's rogue agents. He was taking orders from Barden. His voiceover on the comms sounded animal-like and almost mechanical. And Natalia Sokolova was aware of the hunter, and even inquired of him. After my last video on the roundup of the Season 3 manhunt, and based on the new information, I was inundated with comments and DMs on the possibilities behind the hunters and Natalia. A number of them I was actually quite aligned with, so I've gone through every single one of them, added a few of my own, and the majority of them could have been grouped under one of the following. The hunters are contractors, or a PMC for hire. They are brainwashed or conditioned soldiers. The hunters are a product of Vikram Malik. They could be Black Tusk, or maybe they are Russian special forces. The hunters are contractors or PMC for hire. This theory is quite widely discussed and has a number of different variations that conclude the hunters to be some sort of super specialized mercenary unit, and that Barden Schaefer employed them to help take out the Division agents, both rogue and non-rogue. The reason he had them attacking the rogue agents, even the ones he was trying to work with, was because he decided that they were far too difficult and needed to be removed from the equation. Where this PMC has come from is anyone's guess, but there seems to be a strong support for them coming from rogue or disbanded agents that didn't join up with Keener. Or, if you wanted to add speculation to even more speculation, they are ex-US military, based on their tattoos. Potentially from a unit that Barden's BTSU was also involved with. They have since come together to collaborate with re-establishing the government. This would help to explain the tattoos and potentially why there is only a single hunter that was helping them. Perhaps they only paid for one, who knows? But the hunters have been in contact with division agents in the past, and have already lost comrades during these altercations. Assuming they were given a brief on their role in the mission, they surely wouldn't have just sent a single hunter to assist. Regardless, I'm not overly convinced that they were rogue or first wave disbanded agents who chose not to side with Keener. After all, they were killing other rogue agents who had also chosen not to side with Keener. Plus, they are considerably stronger. Also, Natalia very obviously has something to do with them, and she'd already told Schaefer that he had to work with the rogues. But the main thing that doesn't sit well with me is that if they were American PMC, where have they been hiding up until the point of the outbreak? Even the Black Tusk, although very secretive, was known as being a PMC, and that they had ties to the government. I can't imagine it would have been particularly easy to cover up the use of such a brutal soldier, and the traces of their work that they left behind. Plus, their equipment. How does everyone seem to have SHD tech these days? The hunters are brainwashed or conditioned soldiers. This theory talks to the hunters around how they are possibly brainwashed American soldiers or have been conditioned over time, maybe even experimented on through scientific treatment. They've basically been engineered by a government organization like the CIA as a new type of super soldier. This experimentation resulted in killing machines that are extremely loyal and obedient, but have seemingly been left without the power of speech. Potentially this was done on purpose, so if captured, they would be unable to give specifics on the mission they were employed for, or maybe it was just a side effect of the treatment. This line of thought is further supported by the G. Phillips Protocol, and a particular residential location being a CIA facility in real life, and also, once again, the military tattoos talking to them being US military. It's also possible that when President Ellis changed sides, he gave the Black Tusk the information around this experiment. As he was the vice president when he was contacted by the Black Tusk, he would have likely had access to this type of sensitive, highly confidential information. I don't really have much to say on this one, other than the same queries I had around the previous, like why are those loyal brainwashed troops attacking the rogue agents that are supposed to be working with the Black Tusk? But it just doesn't really feel like the right fit based on the story so far. It feels a little bit too far out there for the Division franchise. Sort of like we're verging on adding zombies to the story. So maybe I'm a little biased on this one, because I'd really hate to see them take the lore down that path. But, well, stranger things have happened. The hunters are a product of Vikram Malik. This one certainly has some merit. I'm not sure where it originated from, but it was sent through to me by a number of different people. Vikram Malik. If you have no idea who this is, I'll quickly re-jog your memory. Earlier on there was a side mission called Odia Tech Office. The division was tasked with securing some new battery packs for the theatre settlement. Once inside the office, they found a civilian called Vikram Malik. He worked for Odia Tech and was being held there against his will by some hyenas. The agents rescue Malik, but the batteries aren't there. The place had been completely looted. Malik agrees to help the division by locating some new battery packs and meets them at the Odia retail store. Also, he needed to gain access to the computer in the store to find some files he needed. Staying in the office, Malik directs the agents to the basement. While down there, he triggers the alarm, gaining the attention of all hyenas within a 2-block radius. Malik had set them up, and after escaping the building was never seen from again. The idea is that Malik, working for a global communications company, had designed a new urban warfare technology. However, we later find out that he's been fired from the company prior to the division rescuing him. It's possible that his vision for the project was getting more and more extreme and out of control, so Odia had to let him go. From there, Malik contacted the Black Tusk and told them of his work. With the Black Tusk's large financial backing, they were able to give him everything he needed to create what we now know as the Hunter. Hunters are equipped with the latest technology from Odia research. Months pass, and Malik realizes that his research and data are still being stored on the Odea servers. And this is where the division finds him trapped in their offices, surrounded by hyenas. He is there trying to delete any remaining data from getting into the hands of the enemy of his new employer. But because the Odea office computers were out of action, he would have to go to the Odea retail store, which is where the division agents came in at the perfect time to help him fight their way through. With most of these speculations around the Hunters, and I've seen a lot, there are certain events that have happened over time that feed into these stories, and on the flip side also disprove them. With this one, also based around a couple of side missions, there really is nothing else that talks to it. Don't get me wrong, I actually quite like it, especially how it gives some more meaning behind the Vikram Malik story, given that he just up and vanished. But it's almost like we're talking about another smaller character whose story didn't really go anywhere. And we, as over-speculating nerds who enjoy the game, chuck our own ending and interpretation behind it. There really just isn't that much to back it up, almost 100% speculation. And I understand how odd that sounds given that all ideas around the Hunters is complete speculation at this point. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. It would be good to see another character having his story be completed or added to the game, but there are a couple of other very small things that don't quite sit right with me. Like, why would the main Odea servers be accessible by a retail store? In a previous life, when I worked for companies that would hold sensitive information, I mean not super sensitive information like urban warfare stuff or anything, I mean I live in New Zealand after all, but there would be no way on earth that this information could possibly be accessed by the front-facing systems, in reception for example. But maybe I'm reading into this a little too much. However, how did he even know of the Black Tusk? There was very little information of them out there. Let's say he was aware of them. How did he know of their current operation, when even the United States' last line of defense, the SHD, had no idea? Maybe the Black Tusk was given intel on his work, and it was them who first initiated contact. Like I said, there would have to be a number of pieces that came together in order for this to work, and we really haven't been given anything that would point in this direction. But at the same time, we haven't been given anything to prove otherwise. So technically it's still a perfectly valid theory. The Hunters are Black Tusk. This would have to be the most popular theory out there. I don't really have to explain this one so much, it makes complete sense. After all, we do actively see the Hunter working with the Black Tusk in the Manhunt, so they're obviously connected in some way. They would have also been the perfect soldier type for hindering the Division's movement in the beginning, while still keeping the BTSU identity hidden. They could be a special unit of the Black Tusk. But the question is, are they Black Tusk, or are they simply working with them? This could explain what Barden meant earlier on, before the invasion, when he told his boss that he already had a team in mind, and that they are the baddest of the bad, ruthless cutthroats or something along those lines. Also, the Black Tusk, at one point, after revealing themselves, were given an order to back off from taking down the Division agents. If the Hunters were Black Tusk, they too would have received the same order, which would explain why the Hunters later on, in the Division 2, were in a more docile state in comparison to the ones we met earlier on. We were the ones hunting them. However, they seem somewhat distanced from the BTSU. There seems to be far more to the story than simply being a part of the BTSU. Like, why have we not seen them earlier in some of the more vital missions that the Division has managed to put a stop to? Sure, it could be because they are more suited to urban, execution-style combat, but that wasn't exactly what we were seeing from the Hunter during the Manhunt. And why only one Hunter? The way Barden interacts with the Hunter certainly gives more of a feel that they're more of a third party, a hired gun, or a borrowed operative. And then there is Natalia's knowledge and questioning around the asset. This leads me to believe that they are more to do with the next theory. The Hunters are Russian. 100% the second most popular and probably the longest surviving theory on the Hunters out there. The reason it's so strongly supported today is because of the introduction of a new name, Natalia Sokolova. This surname is among the 10 most common Russian surnames, and although there is a small amount of variation in the name, it's quite likely that she is in some way related to the Sokolov concern brand set, or more specifically, the Sokolov Corporation. Now apparently this is common knowledge, although I certainly had no idea, but in Russia it's often the case that females of a family would have a slight change to the surname. Some of you would clearly be able to explain this better than I, and this probably isn't the video to be talking about it. but this has something to do with the Russian nouns having a gender associated with them, and with feminine nouns, they often end with an a or ya sound. Well, I found it interesting, but I digress. If Natalia is in fact related to the Sokolov company, this would certainly explain the power she has over Baden Schaefer. It's likely this large international company has considerable financial backing, and is among, or perhaps the main corporation behind the employment of the Black Tusk. The Hunters could be a unit of the Sokolov Corporation, or dare I say it, Russian Special Forces. Another somewhat obvious piece that has always supported this theory is the writings of the man himself, Tom Clancy. In his books, it was relatively common to find the antagonists to be Russian. Time and time again, he would talk about the highly trained and specialized Russian agents sent to destabilize the US government. Often they wouldn't be heard talking, instead communicating with bizarre noises in an attempt to hide any indication of their origin. Sounds familiar, right? This would also talk to the advanced nature of the Black Tusk technology and weapons. However, there are a couple of points enough people have brought up that it's worth talking about. For example, if Natalia is part of the large Russian corporation and is from Russia, where is the accent? To be honest, it isn't too hard to believe that she has learnt to hide the accent. I mean, this has been done countless times over the years. Plus, look at actors. Things can be picked up over time, and she could have been trained in this since she was young for all we know. The Hunter tattoos I talked about in an earlier video. These are very obviously US military tattoos, so if they're Russian, why would they have them? This could just be another way of misleading and hiding their identity. Or, as I've said before, they could simply be a reused asset by the design team. But what about Baden Schaefer? He is a true patriot and believes what he is doing is best for the country. Formerly in the military, would he really think that a Russian-based corporation would be the best thing for the United States? Well, maybe he doesn't know. The way Natalia talks to him is quite vague. He's perhaps in a need-to-know situation, and this could also explain why she talks to him with an American accent. Again, I still question why only one hunter was sent in. Surely they would have seen other hunters being taken down. But when you think about it, the Manhunt was called Concealed Agenda, and we really weren't given much of an idea of what Baden was doing. Maybe the hunter really was just being used as a distraction, along with the rogue agents, to keep the division busy, while Baden was doing whatever he was doing. I don't think Baden being taken down and captured was a part of Natalia's plan, but at the same time she probably saw him as disposable. Going back to Tom Clancy's writings, I always laugh when this one comes up, because I'm always reading about how NGN knows nothing about the way Tom Clancy writes his books. And that's fair, to be honest. A lot of my speculations over the many videos have purposely aimed away from following that path. I have in fact read quite a few of his books, and I do understand the familiar direction his books seem to take. But as we all know, Tom Clancy didn't write the story of the Division. It uses the Tom Clancy name, and his previous books inspired the form in which the story was written, but the Division in general plays out much differently to any other Tom Clancy game, which are usually more tactical and ridiculously unforgiving. Random fact, Tom Clancy actually co-founded Red Storm Entertainment, which was later acquired by Ubisoft. Tom Clancy died in 2013. His family now handle the IP behind the name, and given how the Division ended up being considerably different to previous Clancy titles, it would appear that they're a little more liberal with what can and can't be done with the name. So I didn't see it as completely unusual for the writers to take things in a slightly less Clancy direction. However, if I'm going to be completely honest, after saying all that, the exact moment I saw the name Natalia Sokolova come up within the game, I knew that this wasn't the case. In my opinion, if you wanted to hear it, although you obviously don't have a choice because this is a pre-recorded video and I've made the decision for you, I believe the Division has kept true to the Tom Clancy name, and has decided to follow in the direction that the man himself would have taken. I strongly believe that the Russians will be playing out as the main antagonist. Now this isn't to say that the Hunter origins are 100% Russian, but if not, I still believe that they've had a strong correlation in their development in some way. And really, from here, the biggest questions I have coming out of all of this is what was Natalia and Baden actually trying to do in Season 3? What was their agenda? What is it about Coney Island? And what's still in play? After all that, if you made it this far, Although it's awesome to see the hunters in the story, we really haven't learned too much about their origins. In fact, they've probably just gotten more mysterious in some ways. We also need to remember that this was just one hunter that we witnessed in the Season 3 Manhunt, and his mask seems quite different to the ones we've seen previously, so it is possible that this hunter was acting completely off mission from the others. I really should point out that I am aware of the leaks that were data mined quite some time ago now, but to be honest, I really haven't read into them too much. In fact, I stopped skimming through them before I even managed to get all the way through Season 3, so none of this has been based on that information. And on that point, I ask that you respect others' enjoyment of the story and refrain from discussing them in the comments. Those that want to know the leaks should have no problems in finding them. In saying that, without spoiling the first part of Season 4, we are now able to confirm that the Black Tusk aren't restricting their recruitment to the US military, so this certainly opens up new possibilities. Like always, this has all been based on speculation around the small amount of information we've been given. It's hard once you come up with an idea not to go completely tunnel vision and ignore any new information outside of that one idea. But hopefully it's videos like this that can expand your thoughts to other possible solutions to the mystery that we all love to hate, the hunters. If you have enjoyed this video of me rambling about random division theories that could honestly amount to absolutely nothing, let me know. I'm always skeptical about making them, as I'm generally a person that's more based around hard facts. Yet I still like to consider the what-ifs. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!